Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. Well, I've been thinking about the Serenity prayer. And, it's very popular with AA groups and so forth. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And for survivors, it should be our prayer as well, because as survivors, we can't change the past. We can't change what happened to us. We can change our viewpoint about it. We can change the lies that we were told about it and how those lies affected us, but we can't change the past. But we can, it's hard to have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. That's really hard, but it's necessary, I think, for survivors.
It's beautiful because I was just talking about this with somebody. They were talking about radical acceptance and they had been through some really tough things. And we can look at it and go, I wish that wouldn't happen. Or we can look at it and go, it happened. I accept it. I'm moving on. And I struggle with this because it made me who I am. So there's part of me that's a little resentful. But on the other hand, we look at the newest generation and they call them the snowflake generation because they haven't had to deal with anything. They've been hoovered over, they call the helicopter parents. They haven't had any kind of trauma or things to deal with, so they can't deal with anything. And I remember a professor, I went to Bible college, and his name was Professor Wes. What was I can't remember his name. He was, it'll come to me, because Beagle. Was it Dr. Beagle? No, it was the other one. Anyway, all that to say, he said, and this was, back in the late 70s, he said, we're all going to be bad parents and our kids need to have things to deal with. And he used the word SHIT at a Bible college. And that always stuck with me because it is the adversarial things. And I think of just being a businesswoman. And like today, I wanted to put a chat box on my webpage. And I was like, I went to Chat GPT to figure out how to do it. And I had to learn. And it was frustrating. But I got a chat box on my webpage. Those things help our brain.
Yeah.
They help us. And if we had a perfect life, really, I think people would get bored. And whenever you hear like jokes about heaven and hell, it's like, I don't want to go to heaven. That's boring. Everything's perfect.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? I think that there's something to resistance, and I'm not saying it's good that bad things happen. I'm never going to say that.
No.
But if bad things happen and we choose to face them, embrace them, give me the courage to face,
courage to change what I can.
Yeah, we become better people. And I look at you and I look at all the people we've interviewed. They are all better people. Yeah. Are we glad they were abused? No. It breaks our heart. We can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
But also I look at the work. Look at the work that Mike and Marcus and Nate, look at the work that they're in Luke that they're doing. And that would never come about. And the fact that we might be saving lives, we might be having an impact because of what we went through. Can we embrace that and accept it and let it just be? A lot of people hate it is what it is. But when my husband left me, I called my dearest friend at that time. Her name was Janine. And she said to me, it is what it is. And a lot of people are offended by that. my heart swelled because you know what? It was what it was. I had no control over it. And that is a beautiful thing. When we don't have control and we choose to accept it and embrace it, yeah, we may cry and have a fit and stomp our feet and break things. I know I did.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we get to that point where we radically accept it because it is part of who we are.
Yeah, well, and I think part of what I was looking at is learning that regret doesn't help. Regret doesn't help us at all. And kind of the antidote to regret is gratitude.
Oh.
And I've always looked at that as if you're having regret, the only way to counter that is to have gratitude, to look at the things you are thankful for, that you do have that bring joy to your life, and how gratitude is the only thing that really counters regret. Because I've had a lot of regret in my life, but my regrets don't haunt me anymore like they used to, because I have so much gratitude now, because I do look at the things that bring me joy, that have enriched my life, and I've had so much of them. 22 years of marriage to my best friend.
Hallelujah. Happy anniversary.
Yeah. And so,
My best friend.
yeah. And that's, I think, part of having the courage to change the things that we can. It's easy to dwell on regret, and it's almost feels inevitable, because of all the things that we've gone through. But to stop and just count the things that you're thankful for and work on that, then those things you regret don't matter so much anymore, is what I found.
When my kids were little and I knew something was wrong in my marriage, couldn't put the finger on it, but something was very wrong. And I read a book about Sarah Van Brethnatch was her name, and it was about gratitude. And I started a gratitude journal. And the challenge was 3 things a day that you're grateful for. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but it was very difficult. I lived in a farmhouse that we were on a well, and the water was always black. Why do we come out black? It wasn't warm. It wasn't a well-heated house. And something was wrong with my marriage, which I hadn't put my finger at. And so I was trying to find things I could be grateful for. And it was really hard. And so I was like, okay, I have a reliable vehicle. I have a roof over my head. I have 3 children I adore. And then every day I tried to change it up if I could, but if I couldn't, and that changed my life. And what I always say is, it didn't change my circumstances. But it changed my life because I started to look, and rather than just be spiraling down with all the things that were wrong, because there was really big thing going on here, but I learned to find a place of gratitude. And the ladies that I work in with recovery, and it's interesting because recovery from abuse or recovery from drugs and alcohol, when we focus on gratitude, it is life-changing. And now I can make a list. There's a book called, but it was 100 Gifts is the name of the book. And you're supposed to make a list of 100 things you're grateful for. So I had been doing 3 things a day. And so I decided I'm going to keep a journal of 100 things. Or for her, it was 1,000. And so I was riding the bus every day, and I was trying, because it's easy to go to the things that we can know. So I'm just keeping this notebook with me, and I'm trying to write 1,000 things I'm grateful for. And I remember the bus driver stopped, and it was a handicap stop. So he had to put out the thing, then the wheelchair went out and down the ramp. And I thought, I have legs that work. And that moment seemed to change everything, because all of a sudden I realized I have eyes that can see, I have a mouth that can speak, I have a job, I have transportation. And that moment shifted, because when I would be caught up in, I'm divorced, I'm a single mom, it's easy to get caught up in those. But when I started thinking about the little things that I could be grateful for, and I started looking, then I started looking like if I walked by a garden, wow, look at, so I started to really raise that awareness. And gratitude is, sometimes I feel like it's the only thing that saves my life. I could wake up in the morning when my brother-in-law was passing away. It's a year anniversary. And today is actually his birthday. And there were so many things wrong, but yet there were so many things that I could be grateful for. So it really does make a difference.
Yeah, especially when it feels like nothing
Going.
ever works, nothing ever goes right, nothing's good. There's always something we can hold on to. And I think just not taking things for granted is so important in my life. For a long time, I took so much for granted, but just found fault in everything I was doing and everything that happened to me. And I blamed myself for everything, and I blamed others for what happened to me. And just was always constantly looking for who to blame for
Mm,
the mess I was in, rather than having any kind of gratitude for what actually was good in my life or anything that I enjoyed.
mhm.
And it did change when I actually started praying the Serenity prayer back then.
Mm,
That was one of my
wow.
things that I started doing back when I first started getting treatment.
Mhm,
And it gave me hope because I thought if I just had a little bit of courage, I could change things. Give me the courage to change the things that I can.
mm.
And I thought, if I just had a little bit, I can face things and start doing things. And it gradually grew, and
Mhm,
things did start changing. But don't know exactly when I
mhm,
really embraced gratitude, because at first it was hard, because I
mhm,
always felt like I'd been dealt a bad hand
mhm.
and it
I
wasn't
can't get a
fair.
break.
Yeah, but now it's easy.
Mhm,
And it's surprising when you start, it is hard.
mhm,
And it also feels like it doesn't make a difference at first. When I first started, it didn't feel like it mattered that much. The things I was grateful for, it's like,
mhm,
yeah, whoopee, everyone else has so much more, or, is so much better off than I am.
mhm,
But it does grow, and then you start to, and that's the thing is I don't have that regret that I hung on to for so long, and
mhm.
that's what really held me back, was just the regret
Yeah.
of what happened to me and what I went through and all the bad choices I made and all the things I could have done better.
Mhm.
Now I don't worry about that anymore. It's not hanging over me, and that's because I feel of gratitude.
It's a gift. When I gave up my job at Warm 106.9, which was a job I loved, and I accepted a job, my dream job, full time, big money, as an afternoon anchor. And the person who hired me went to another station. The new people had their team already picked, and I lost that job.
Mhm.
And before I lost it, there was something that happened that was devastating. My sister said, I thought you were broken. I was so devastated. But when I lost that job, when it was like, we're letting you go, I got in my car, and the minute I drove out of the garage, I was flooded with peace and gratitude. And it didn't make any sense because now I was not going to have any money. I was unemployed, but there was something in me because of the practice. Gratitude, they say an attitude of gratitude, which I think is nice, but really it's a practice of gratitude. And
Mm.
when we can, have our pity party, have your moment of sadness, I'll never begrudge anybody that, but then find that place. And I am so surprised at the life I'm living now. I did not think that I would be able to survive without radio. Who would I be? I thought I'd have this huge identity crisis. And every morning I wake up and I'm so grateful
Mm.
for this life, and I'm so happy. And if you would have told me that that's where it would have gone, but I think about it and I think I practiced gratitude for so long. When I worked at Warm, which was my dream job, but it was only part-time, so I wasn't getting paid what I needed to survive as a single woman. But every day when I sat down in my chair in that studio, I said, thank you, God, for this job. And I think that when we practice gratitude, it does change things. So when something big comes our way, it may affect us for a while, but then we find that place because we've been doing the work.
Yeah, and it isn't easy,
Mm.
especially at first. And
When
it
you want to
does,
punch someone.
it does take courage to
Mm.
change the things that we can change.
Yes.
And that courage comes from realizing we're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the first things that I had to do was realize that I deserved to change the things that I could change.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And that
I
you're capable.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think at first I didn't, it took me a long time to feel like I was worth it. And that's where my courage came from, was feeling I am worth it. I am worth changing this. I don't need to feel this way. I don't have to be so hard on myself. And the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, that's a big deal. And when I was first getting therapy, and it was hard to just feel like I couldn't change it, but I didn't have serenity about it. I was angry. I was
Mhm.
pissed off. I was,
Mhm.
I felt like, why did I deserve this?
Yeah.
But having that serenity gives you the opportunity to grow past it. If you don't have that serenity, you're going to be stuck in that spot,
Yeah.
stuck in that victim, stuck in that, why
Mhm.
did this happen to me? I didn't deserve this spot.
Mhm.
And no one deserves it,
Mm-mm.
but it has happened. So what
Well,
can you do about it?
yeah. Even when you think about people, maybe it wasn't abuse, but maybe they got in a car accident. It was
Hmm.
no fault of their own, and now they can't walk. Like there's so many levels of this kind of acceptance. And I helped a lady launch her podcast since Being Brave tour. And I got to be her first interview, which was such a
Yeah,
blessing.
I saw
And
it.
she asked me about my brave moment. And I think that we talk so much about being courageous and sharing your story.
Hmm.
But the truth is, the brave moment does not feel brave until we're looking back and we go, that was a brave moment.
Hmm.
But in the midst of those brave moments, those moments of courage, those moments when we go, I'm going to do the thing that is hard. I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to tell my story. Those do not, in most cases, feel brave. They feel horrible.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went to the police about my dad, the statute of limitations was off, but I shared my story. I knew the statute of limitations was off, but I thought if I at least say it and get it on file, if something else happens, even though they can't do anything about me. And that was one of the worst days of my life. It did not
Mm.
feel good. It did not feel brave. I went home crying, feeling like, what was it worth? Why did I do that? I lived in a small town, so the police chief who I'm sharing this with is somebody I know. And I'm
Hmm.
happy to tell him I was an abused kid. But when I look back at what my brave moment was, I didn't feel brave at the moment. And I think that that's kind of the serenity thing, is like we stand up and we do what we're called to do. We face those demons. And
Mm.
it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel brave. But when we look back, it was like that was courageous and that was
Hmm.
brave.
Yeah, I think some of the bravest things I did, I wasn't brave at all. I was scared.
Yeah. Like
And
give me an example.
well, just confronting my family,
Hmm.
and I didn't feel good about it
I think about,
before, during, or after.
right. I think about when you told your mom
Hmm.
and how hard that was and how hard it was for her. It didn't feel like a brave moment, but
No,
honestly, it was a very brave moment. It's
yeah.
so
Well,
brave of you
well,
to
I
do.
know, but it was so hard, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I think it takes a lot of courage to do the things that we don't know
Right.
what is going to happen, what the end result will be. And I think
Hmm.
that's true for a lot of survivors that have to finally address what they're going through, tell their family, their wife or husband, admit that they want and need counseling,
Hmm.
all those things that are so hard and so scary. So much of what's scary is we don't know what it's going to be like when we do it,
Right.
and we don't know what it's like to actually do it. I mean, therapy can be really intimidating.
Hmm.
We don't know what we're going to dig up or have to talk about, or how we're going to. And for me, I'd never known anyone that had gone to therapy, so I didn't know what to expect. So, yeah, I think that was the other really hard thing, was admitting I needed therapy and
That's soft.
going. and
Yeah.
finding a therapist
Mhm.
and telling that person my story.
You know, I feel like this is a really good place to think about those brave moments. Like, make a list, write it down of those times that you were brave that you didn't feel like it. Take that look back of what was brave. I remember when I recognized my husband was gay, I had gone to the library. It was before internet. They had a book sale, and I went to the comedy and I picked up this book. It was funny, Barbara Johnson. And I got home and I started reading it. Well, her son had come out as gay. Now, this is in the 70s. And Christian people, well, still, but then more so, they would, if their kid was gay, they would alienate them. And it was called Spatula Ministries because when your kid tells you they're gay, you have to scrape yourself off the ceiling. And I remember reading this book, and she had a lot of regrets later in life as she was dying of cancer, of how she treated her son who came out. And I remember reading that, and this is what was going through my head. No, 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 because I knew my husband was gay, and I didn't want it to be true. But there's those moments when we finally recognize the thing that we're denying, that we don't want to be true, when we have memories and we don't want those things to be true. But when we look at them and we face them, as hard as it is, it's so scary and it's so awful. But when we look back, that's our brave moment.
Yeah, it is. And for me, it's gotten easier to do those hard things,
Yeah.
mainly because I know a lot more about what it's like to do them.
Mhm.
They don't scare me as much because they're not strange. They're not
I mean,
unfamiliar.
you have a podcast
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So, I don't have those expectations of not knowing what's going to happen. But I think for right now, the bravest things I do now is just facing the issues I still have and recognizing them. I thought I was fine when I started this podcast and everything was good and I wanted to share all this, things are great and this is how I got this way, and I've started realizing now things aren't always great. There's still a lot of things to deal with,
Yeah.
and it's not always easy, but it's worth it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the main message is
Mhm.
it's worth it to take the courage to change the things you can. It does matter.
Hmm. And I think because often survivors have a message in some way, whether it's toxic shame, whatever, that it was our fault. So when we are able to face it and recognize that it wasn't our fault, that is a very brave move.
Mm,
Because it's really easy to stay in a place of, well, that's the way it was, or that we find a place where we can just accept it and move on. And I think of a lady who went to a doctor to lose weight, and the doctor sent her to a trauma therapist.
mm-hmm,
And she had had trauma as a little girl. She was sexually abused by a neighbor, but she had tried to tell her parent, and maybe they ran to the neighbors, maybe whatever, but they were just like, they didn't like give her what she needed. And
mm-hmm,
so her whole life, she's like, that's what happens. It's no big deal. Get over it. Pull up put on your big girl panties. But then when she went to the trauma therapist and worked through that, no, that was a big deal. Yes, that did happen to you. And she learned how to accept it and then move on. She lost weight.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think so much of the things that really affect us that we're not really aware of change when we start taking care of the things that we're holding in, the things that we're bottling up. If we can, that ACE test,
Yeah.
they they
ACEs. Mm-hmm.
ACEs, they talk about how, people with a high score on that tend to have so many health issues, have
Mm-hmm.
shorter lifespans. There's all these things they talk about. Well, I think it's often because people with high scores bottle that stuff up. They don't address it. They don't deal with it. They just internalize it. And if we can face it and deal with it and have the courage to try and change what we can change, and then I think those health issues tend to get minimized. I don't know for everyone, but I think for a lot of people, it's easy to not take care of yourself when you don't care about yourself.
Right.
And
And people know it. When you don't care about yourself, you don't treat yourself right, and they don't treat you right.
yeah, so I think that Serenity Prayer's just been on my mind again lately because, yeah, that was where I started, one of the things that I embraced. And it wasn't easy because I didn't have much serenity about accepting the things I couldn't change. And I didn't feel much courage about changing the things I could.
Mm-hmm.
But finding the difference was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it starts because it's hard to have serenity about what happened. And it's hard to have the courage. But when you find the difference, then you can start to separate between what happened to you and what you can do about it.
Yeah, and that's when we begin to let go of shame.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, because for me, thinking that I never wanted to tell anyone about this
Mm-hmm.
and never wanted anyone to know my history because they would treat me a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But then finding out that because of it, I wasn't taking care of myself. In order to take care of myself, I had to talk about this and deal with it and face my issues and work on my issues, and then things started changing.
Yeah. And like we started with finding that place of gratitude. And I know for me, well, working with women in recovery, if they are not finding gratitude every day, they will relapse. They have to search. They have to find the things they can be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I coach a lot of people. And if people don't have a history of any kind of abuse or addiction, they don't really get gratitude. But anybody that's been through any kind of NAAA, the recovery cafes, they know the value of gratitude,
Yeah.
and they know they can't survive without it. And to me, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and I think not having gratitude is you're wasting your life
Mm-hmm.
if you're not grateful for what you've got.
Right. And we can all find something, and we may have to dig a little deep. We may have to
Mm-hmm.
search.
Yeah, but it gets easier.
It does. And being grateful, I mean, there's even a verse in the Bible in Philippians that says, whatsoever things are true and good and lovely, think on these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there is something to that. And I feel like this is a good place for us to stop and pray. But I would love for you to just say the Serenity Prayer again, because it is so valuable and so, basic.
Yeah, yeah, it seems so basic, but it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's what really started off for me. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I just thank you for all your blessings. Most of all, for your wisdom in our lives, Lord. Just pray that you would give us wisdom and courage. And anyone listening, that you would bless them with wisdom to know what they cannot change and know what they can change. Mm-hmm. Give them the courage to change the things they can. And even though it's hard, bless them with the serenity to accept the things they cannot change. But most of all, the wisdom to know what they can change and what they cannot. Mm-hmm. In your name I pray.
Father, I'm so grateful that we can be grateful. I'm so grateful that you've given us a directive in Philippians. Whatsoever things are good, think on these things. And there's been times when I felt like maybe I was a bit of a Pollyanna, but I do realize, Lord, that when we can find places to be grateful, even if we have to dig a little, that it changes who we are. Because when we can look at gratitude, and when we can find a way to radically accept whatever abuse we've suffered. I think of people who were in car accidents that, was never their fault. I think about people who are in addiction who just all of a sudden they've lost everything. Lord, that we can find a place and a way to be grateful, and that it can change our life. It can change our mindset. And we talk about neuroplasticity all the time, how our mind can change our brain. And I pray that you'll help us. Help us every day to find things that we can be grateful for. In your Son's holy name, amen.
Amen.